Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back out working on the Kubelwagen. Got some loose ends to tie up before I kind of move along and start working on the body panels. So today I'm not going to get a lot of work done. Got some other projects on the go that I have to kind of put my attention to as well. Yeah, so I'm going to kind of simultaneously work on the Kubel today and do some painting, and then I'm going to work on this, just making some fire pits and some little mini wood stoves out of propane tanks. So it's kind of other stuff that I work on from time to time. Kind of got sidetracked on this little guy. Little wood stove for my cabin. Got to finish the bead up here, and then just a little bit of paint, but it's pretty much done. Okay, so I'm going to start working on these quarter panels and getting the ribs rolled in on the bead roller. So I just have to do some layout. I'm really precise about this line here. That's what I'm calling the master line, and I've got that going across, and it's level, and it goes all the way, and it transfers over to the pattern on the back. And so basically I just need to get the front and back quarter panel to line up to have the ribs perpendicular and level, and I can do the doors. I can make the doors match later. It's not going to be a problem. So right now what I'm trying to figure out is exactly what spacing I want to use for the ribbing, and the most obvious thing that you notice are the two doors and the rear quarter panel. The front quarter panel, it has 3 ribs on it, but they're very small, and they're not as noticeable compared to what you see from the doors back. So my thought process is get the doors right and go from there. Problem is I don't have doors right now. I want to make sure that rear quarter panel is right. So I'm just double checking my work. I had 3.5 inch spacing, and that's what this piece of cardboard here is, a door, 26 by 20. I centered it at 10 inches, and then I came out from there evenly. And this door looks like, it looks pretty close to, you know, what you're getting from different sources. You know, if you look at pictures of a Kubel, you know, the kind of 2 center ribs are pretty much centered, and then there's an equal amount of space from the top and the bottom. So I had this cardboard mocked up 3.5 inches, and then this morning I got it in my head that 4 inches was better. So now I'm double checking things, and I was probably correct in the first place. It basically, the scale of this is roughly 1 centimeter equals 1 inch. And now, of course, you can see, look at how it's the perspective of this photograph. They were kind of back and on an angle, so it's obviously narrower at the top. But if I look at the spacing of this rib here and the spacing from here to here, that comes into, you know, it's in the ballpark of 3.5 inches, and then, you know, it kind of successively gets smaller as you go further away because of the perspective. But I think I can trust that at 3.5. So yeah, when I laid it out at 4, I kind of thought, oh, that looks fine on the front fender, but then I started playing around with it on the back, and it just doesn't sit right. So unfortunately, I'm going to backtrack a bit here. I'm going to sand off these markings, and I think what I did is I had this bar sitting on the fender, on both fenders, and that's the line I took. I think the bar needs to actually be up a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the lines on the cardboard door, because that's 3.5 inches, and the perspective, it all looks good on the cardboard door. So I'm going to transfer over that line onto here, and then I'm going to level this bar from that line back, and that's going to be my master line, and then I'll measure the 3.5 inch spacings for the 1 inch ribs. I'm actually using 1.25 inch kind of as my gauge, because the die I'm using, it's not a perfect 1 inch, but that's what I'm going to go with. So I'll go back, remark everything, and then I'll take some video and show you guys the end result. Because again, I want to make sure that this is bang on, the lines and everything, you know, are good before I start rolling the beads in, because once that happens, there's no turning back. So there's the layout back at the 3.5 inch spacing. And there's the rear quarter panel. Not perfectly replicating a Kubelwagen. The real issue is this third rib here. It's obvious that the fenders are slightly larger on an actual Kubel. They come up maybe 1 inch or 2 higher, and therefore this line is cut off more aggressively. Like the way I have it, the top of the line shoots almost right across. It could theoretically, you know, but I might cut it back. I might stop it a little further back to kind of give the illusion. And I wondered about this little guy. It's actually there. There's a little kind of like a little cutout. So I'm gonna do that just to better replicate it. I think I need to come over a little bit further. I didn't want to have it come too far over, because it seems to distort the edge of the sheet metal. I want a nice flat edge here, but I'm going to come over as far as I dare with the ribs, because the Kubel, it's quite close. You know, when it comes to the door and the quarter panel, there's not much of a space in between. So I'm going to get that as close as I can. Gotta save money wherever you can. Picked this up at Value Village the other day. Wasn't sure if it was going to work. Didn't seem like it was working in the store. The wife, she kind of thought maybe the battery was dead, so we bought it, brought it home. I let it sit outside in the sun. I just tested it out a minute ago. Works fine. So perfectly good welding helmet for $5. Okay, so I got the inner rocker panel done on the driver's side now. So that's going to allow me to paint it on the inside tomorrow. It's supposed to be warm. So I'm going to put some primer and some rust paint on the inside. So I'm just waiting for a buddy to come over and help out with some of the bead rolling on the body panels. Decided to pull this out of the barn. It's the framework for the canopy for the 181 thing, and I was hoping I'd be able to reuse it, and it's going to work. Just for simplicity, I kind of like clamped it here. I think it needs to actually be mounted back a few inches for it to work right. I might have to modify the front a bit. Obviously this piece has got to get replaced anyways because it's rusted out. But the front here is where I'll play around with the length. So pretty happy that I'm going to be able to use this, at least temporarily. Yeah, it's kind of backlit with those south-facing windows, so you can't really see it well, but actually looks pretty good. It gives you a good kind of idea what the roof line's going to look like. So yeah, there's the mounting point. Like I said, it needs to come back a few inches at least, which is easy, not a problem. I mean, it's just a piece of steel, the hole through it, and I just got it C-clamped, you know. It's just to get it fit and just see if it's going to work. I had it folded up, and with it mounted here, when it folds up, the problem is the bar, one of the crossbars is kind of covering the trunk, or that lid for the cargo area, which I don't like that. Now that gets mitigated as you move it back, but I don't know if moving it back, the space, you know, the 4 or 5 inches is going to actually change that. It's still going to be covered up just a bit, which I don't like. One option is to make the actual lid a little smaller, maybe an inch and a half or 2 inches smaller. And that way, when the canopy's folded up, you can open up the lid, right? That's how it's supposed to work. So I'll have to play around with that, but it's pretty rusty. But I can just wire wheel this and give it a good coat of primer and coat of paint. For the most part, all the joints are really good condition. It's really just surface rust. Like I said, the only piece that needs to get dealt with is that front bar, but that would have had to get replaced anyways or heavily modified to work with my new windshield frame, so not really a big deal.
One more.
I think we're good there. That was.
Yeah, that feels pretty stiff.
Okay, I think we're keeping off now.
Nice, slow.
Okay, so that's the rear quarter panel. As predicted, it does cause a bit of warpage, but you're able to flip over the panel and kind of use a rubber mallet and flatten it out, and then wherever there's creases, you can actually, I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to clamp this down, and I'm going to use plug welds along the edge, so when this all gets clamped down, it will actually weld down tight. If you look at the front one here, like for instance, right up in this area, there was a really big kind of warp or a bow, and if you just throw the clamps on it, it flattens right out. So it might be a little bit more tedious to actually attach the panels and weld them in place, making sure everything's lined up and they're flat, but the main thing is the bead roller's working, and it's going to work. Some slight inconsistencies with the line, that first center line, a little bit crooked at the back. I'm just going to have to live with it. I don't think most people are going to notice. So I'm just taking a little break from the body panels, and I'm going to do some painting prep. I'm going to try tomorrow to do some primer on some of the spots. I'm cleaning with this stuff, this grease and wax remover. I think you could just use brake clean. Probably do almost as good a job. And wherever there's gaps and there's some spots where the different panels fit together, I want to seal up. And I'm using this Body Pro that I got at Napa. It's spots like this I'm using the seam sealer on, these little gaps here. That's a place where water could get in between the two rocker panels or possibly get inside the actual vehicle. So I'm using the seam sealer on spots like that. There's some places at the back as well that I'm going to put seam sealer. Just went ahead and did a coat of primer on the back seat area.
I also did the outer rocker panels on the inside. Just got some tape around the edge where I'm going to weld.